Welcome to the Doctors of Running virtual roundtable, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and the science to the stuff that we are putting on our feet. It is episode 65 of the roundtable. It is continually? That's not a word.
Continuously.
Continually.
I think those are both words.
Those are both words. Continually.
Someone who has an English degree, please check up on that.
Please stand up. Well, basically I was trying to say that we keep getting more episodes, which makes sense because we keep recording more episodes. Anyway, none of this is important. We are on episode number 65. It is mid to late. It's actually late November 21st today that we're recording. And so we are going to actually start our DPT approved awards. These are what we do every year in talking about different categories of running shoes that have come out and giving out what we think are some of our favorites and some of the best from kind of a biomechanical analysis perspective, knowing that there's a lot of nuance in what best means from a biomechanical perspective. Today, we are going to be on the topic of best daily trainer. We thought it'd be a great spot to start because daily trainers are the shoes that crank out the most miles. But before we dive into that, I do want to give some statistics from our team this year and kind of premise how this process takes place. So our team consists of 7 runners, 6 who are DPTs, and then Bach, our social media wizard. Between the 7 of us, we have ran I looked out today, 14,523 miles this year among the 7 of us. And then if we could talk about just the 3 of us who are here, which is Matt and David and I, we have 7,549 miles, and we still got a month to go. So we'll be definitely topping, 1,500, maybe even getting close to 1,600. Wow, no, 16,000. Man, Sunday night. We could hit 16,000 miles by the end of the year. We shall see. Could be pretty cool. So we got a lot of miles on shoes. And speaking of shoes, this year we have reviewed and tested 110 different shoes. So we're not just choosing from 10 shoes that we've tried. We've got 110 different shoes that we've tested out this year. And so we are going to be picking our categories based on testing of all of those. And so this is probably our best grouping of awards because in the past we haven't had this many. I think last year was 70 something. So we just keep going up in the number of different shoes we've tried, which means that our pool has more breadth to it and we can really get a good pick. So we are going to talk about best daily trainer. We're going to give that a little bit of a definition. We're talking about a daily trainer, which is a shoe that can eat up a lot of your training miles, reliable and consistent, and can function as a workhorse shoe, has mild versatility. So that's kind of what we're using when we talk about what's our best daily trainer. The way we're going to go about this is each of us are going to give our honorable mention picks. Honorable mention doesn't mean that it wasn't the reviewer's favorite shoe, but we did come together as a team for a consensus pick. So, one of us might have a shoe that was actually our favorite daily trainer of the year. That's one of the honorable mention or contributor picks. So we're going to talk through those first, and then at the end we'll give our team's consensus pick. So David, why don't we start with you? Do you want to give us your kind of contributor pick for daily trainer?
Yeah, I was trying to pull up the mileage on these shoes real quick. I don't think that's going to happen. Let me see. Oh, no. Yes, it will. Okay, so...
Hey-o.
Yeah, I kind of create this category based on what I reach for the most because a large chunk of our mileage is easy mileage.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that naturally does tend to be either the Hoka Mach 4 or the Hoka Clifton 8. I like them a lot. They're not really overdone in any way. They're both relatively light. The Mach 4 is a little bit more responsive. So I can take it on a little bit more up-tempo stuff, but I think I've got right about 200 miles or so on both of these. And you can see like that outsole, it's a little shredded, right? I mean, it's seen some better days. This one, the Clifton is actually holding up quite well.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised that the Clifton held up that well because I started eating into that posterior lateral heel like pretty early, but then it kind of just stayed the same.
Yeah.
So that's cool. But yeah, they're light on their feet, nothing too crazy. It's relatively gradual rocker. They both have pretty flexible forefoots for having such a rocker formation to them. I think just the deep flex grooves that they use in the shoes. But it feels nice, relatively smooth transitions, nothing crazy, but something I keep reaching for.
Yeah.
So
when you, for these two, for you, these were higher than our consensus pick, correct? Like you would have.
They were.
Yeah, these were your favorites, these two.
Yeah, so if I had to go in order, the Hoka Mach 4 is my daily trainer of the year, personally. That's my number one spot. And then on pretty much anything pre-race or pre-workout, if I'm not testing anything, I do like the Clifton. It's just easy, nice on my feet. I feel pretty good. And then I switch into something more responsive, a little bit lighter, more racing profile, and I just feel good.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Both easy days, both long runs, daily training, time on feet. I like them both. So
I've got one question for you too regarding the Mach 4. You've got like 200 miles. I think one of the questions people ask is it's a rubberized EVA rubberized EVA outsole. It doesn't have rubber. Just talk a little bit about like your durability experience with that in terms of grip and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I thought I was going to be slipping around more when we first received the shoe. It really relies on that rubberized EVA outsole to get its grip. I mean, it's because it decompresses a little bit, you almost get a little bit of a grabbing sensation, especially when you're running on the road. And if you're running on kind of more of a gritty road, it's really noticeable. So from a traction standpoint, even though there's no like blown rubber or carbon rubber, it actually does quite well. And even on the trails, it didn't do too bad for me. I think just because the wide base on there and it's a relatively stable platform. I mean, nothing crazy, but I'm also not bombing downhills in the Mach 4,
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But I mean, like basic trail running, it's done okay for me. We have to encounter it. Being in Santa Barbara, there's plenty of runs where we have, at least 30-40% of it on trails. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I enjoy it. It's not a trail shoe, but it works well for me. Durability wise, it's held up decently well. I mean, it has come down. That ProFly midsole, I haven't bit into it just yet, but it's basically leveled out in that mid forefoot now. So there's not too much more life on these. It's probably going to get retired in the next 100, depending how each consecutive 25 miles goes, I could see it being 25. I could see it being 100, just kind of seeing how it goes, but it's reaching the end of its days, but that's industry standard, 250, 300. Right. So
cool. And you would say Clifton more firm than the Mach. Like Clifton's more just kind of like, and I like the differentiation you make where you're like, it's kind of nice to do Clifton before workouts because you get this like more contrast between the Clifton's ride and then whatever workout shoe you're popping into.
Yeah, it's just cozy. I mean, there's nothing really that special about the Clifton, and that's actually what I like about it. It's pretty simple. It's a simple geometry. I mean, it's just a nice little rocker. It's decently flexible forefoot. I mean, more flexible when it's loaded. The sidewalls work pretty well for me. Thankfully, in this Clifton, it didn't really destroy my midfoot, whereas the Clifton 6 did. And I enjoyed the shoe, but it was a deal breaker.
Yep.
And I didn't get to run in the Clifton 7, but the Clifton 8, I got a little bit of rubbing, but nothing crazy, not enough to make me stop running in the shoe.
Yeah.
So, just a nice, pleasant shoe. I mean, I've done 20 plus miles in this shoe in one go. And as long as it's more like time on feet and I'm not trying to run fast, it's just a nice, pleasant ride. So
nice.
That's my reasoning.
Cool. I won't go too far into this, but one more thing I think about the Mach 4 versus Clifton. Like there's a couple shoes that Hoka came out this year that had a slightly different fit profile than kind of their traditional fit. Like I feel like the Mach 4 was one of those where it fit a little bit wider through the early toe box and didn't have any of that midfoot kind of like the classic Hoka blister spot. Like it didn't, the Mach didn't do that for me at all. And the Zenal didn't either. So I think that there's been a couple shoes that have kind of changed their fit a little bit compared to like the Rincon was pretty traditional. and the Rincon 3, and then this one, the Clifton. So cool.
This could be fully just speculating. I feel like it's those ProFly midsole shoes that they widen it out a little bit. The sidewalls aren't quite as tall.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'd have to go look at
that. Could
all
be
of
true.
them, but
yeah. Don't quote us, but that's a good thought. I'll go next, so that we can finish stronger. You know, people forget the thing in the middle. So we'll start with David because you remember what's first, and then I'll go so that you forget what I say, and then we'll go with Matt third to finish strong. So, you know, my number one is actually the consensus pick, so that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm going to talk about my second pick. I actually gave these to a friend, but he gave them back to me so I could record showing you guys the shoe. But I had 65 miles on them before I handed them over, and I would have kept reaching for them. And that is the Puma Velocity Nitro. So first question is, what color is this?
Orange.
Oh, darn it. I called it red, and my friend was like, first of all, it's orange. I was like,
you're colorblind.
I feel like it's a red. Maybe it's red orange.
I can see a red orange. I can see.
You're the same person. Didn't you bring something up the other day and you were like, what color is this? And I was like,
that was the dress. It was the dress thing.
Yeah. No. But it was a shoe before the dress. I brought up the dress.
Who brought up I don't think it was me though. Was it me?
I think that was Bach.
Bach might have done that.
It might have been Bach.
In our chat, we both the blue and black, white and gold dress thing came back up. But anyway, so the Velocity Nitro, this is one of those shoes that I think is pretty traditionally built. You know, there's not a huge rocker on it. I think it's about a 14-degree 4-foot rocker, and then just it's a centered bevel, but it's pretty big overall. Not big like rocker sole big, but they bevel it enough where it's not abrasive on heel striking. And there's a couple things that I really appreciated about it. Even though it's a pretty traditional build and doesn't have like a propulsive feel to it, the midsole, having the Nitro midsole, does give it a little bit of more of a bounce to those daily miles and gives it a little bit of that ability to feel okay picking up the pace. And I also just really appreciate the centered nature of the shoe. The wider cutout in the middle really centers the foot with kind of pretty decently thick rubber on the outside, which is something else like that I appreciate about a daily trainer, is something that's going to last me a while because I do want to just have it, you know, eat up miles. And then they have this rim with a firmer EVA that goes through it's like a C-shaped rim that covers the heel cup. And I just found that really centers the heel. And for me, I'm someone who has a little bit of sensitivity to an unstable heel. So like, for example, like the Endorphin Speed just I can't run a lot of miles in that because the heel is a little bit more wobbly and I'm sensitive to that. So, you know, the firmer EVA rim and kind of the centered nature of that cutout, I really just appreciated. And again, kind of that very traditional feeling shaping, but gave it a fun foam. Fun is maybe too strong of a word. It does have a little bit of a rebound to it, and it's not just a firm EVA; it's softer. I just really appreciated that. And from an upper comfort standpoint, one of the most comfortable uppers that I wore this year was this shoe. Minus the collar was just a little high, but that was the only issue there. So cool. Let's move on to Matt. What's your contributor pick before we get to our consensus pick?
Now, I know we had a consensus pick. Did you have a runner-up that you wanted to go through? Or that was the big one?
This is my runner-up.
Well, that is your runner-up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'm in the same boat where I have one of my favorites, but I'm going to go through my two others, and I'm going to go with my primary one and then my runner-up. So I'm going to do kind of top three here.
Don't give the consensus, Matt. I feel like you're about to do it.
I'm going to talk about my other ones.
Oh, okay.
So this is a very close battle. And there is, I think, a little bit what helped was having some history with the shoe, and this shoe helped me get through a couple Achilles irritations. So I'm going to have to go through with my pick being the Mizuno Wave Rider 25. There were some significant changes. The transition to a full Energy midsole did change some things, and the forefoot is one of the most flexible in a daily trainer that I've seen in a long time, especially
Definitely.
in today's age. We're getting max stack height shoes that are getting stiffer with more toe spring. This actually had a really nice amount of flexibility, which I learned to appreciate, just because I think the more shoes we train in and the more that we test, the more I'm like, you know what, I really enjoy some variety, and getting some flexibility in the forefoot can be nice, but can also be really hard to find. The other thing, that Energy sole is really nice. I really felt that I was less beat up afterwards. I do appreciate the higher heel drop for just some of the issues I had this year, but it also compresses enough that it doesn't feel that high as a heel striker myself. And the upper was just super comfortable. It was a shoe I wore casually and got well over like 170-ish miles in, and I still could barely get through the outsole. So durability was phenomenal. So I got to give my pick to the Wave Rider 25. I didn't get to try the Wave Knit. I just tried the.
Me neither.
Yeah.
We honestly should pick up a pair, because we all, I mean, you guys love the Wave Knit 24
Wave
more.
Knit amazing. Yeah.
We should pick up a pair of the Wave Knits.
And just for the record, too, I guess it would fall under honorable mention as well, because the Wave Rider just missed that honorable mention from me as well. So
my honorable mention is the Puma Magnified Nitro, which I really did not expect to like. And one of the big things that surprised me, it has, I don't know, because David's seen me warm up before. Nathan, you haven't seen how bad early in the morning. It's not a pretty picture. Like, it takes me a while to warm up. Then I can get moving. I definitely have that like 80, 90-year-old man shuffle first mile. But that shoe was super smooth to transition in, and like it made warm-ups really easy. I love the nitro foam. That little plastic, what do we want to call that? What was that called in the rear foot?
It's a plastic EVA, like
what is that? Like
plate. It's like it's a C plate.
Yeah. That plate stabilized my heel really well. And I couldn't figure out for the longest time, like, why does this feel more stable than it should? The midfoot narrowed. I didn't think that was going to feel good. But I think that C plate in the rear foot plus the really solid guidance line through the midsole was really nice. And it was nice to have a maximal shoe that had a ton of cushioning, but that didn't feel clunky. It still had more of a traditional last and shape to the shoe. Still had some decent forefoot flexibility, and just was so pleasant to get miles on. And it was another shoe that, again, I'm the destroyer, and I got almost 200 miles onto that and still did not wear through the outsole. The only thing is that upper was a little thicker than I would like, and it definitely picked up some odors. So those had to be recycled and not donated for that reason. But those are my kind of top two. The Wave Rider took the spot just because it's it's one of those stable neutral shoes, even with the Energy foam. So it works really well for somebody like me, who I should be in a stability shoe, but I've come to gravitate towards stable neutral shoes that have gotten a little bit more sensitive to posts for some reason over the last year. But yeah, the Rider just kind of beats that in terms of, it checks all the boxes for someone like me, needing a shoe that can handle a little bit of up tempo, but mostly a good, reliable daily trainer, especially with someone that has a couple Achilles things going on here and there. So
those are good picks. Quick note on difference between the Velocity Nitro and the Magnify. So the Magnify has two different midsole compounds throughout the entire length. You have the firmer EVA on the lower level, and then a very thick level of nitro foam. So it's a very high stacked, much stiffer through the forefoot, and has a little bit more of that like forefoot rocker that goes into the ride. Whereas and a little bit softer, like just feels softer underfoot compared to the Velocity Nitro, which is a little more traditionally feeling, which is why I gravitated towards that one. For me, I appreciated a little bit of that lower feel. But that's kind of the main difference. The stack heights and then the construction of the firmness or stiffness, through the forefoot is probably the biggest difference. Cool. Any other questions for anybody regarding their picks? Or are we ready to move on to our consensus pick?
It sounds like we're ready.
Yeah, crickets is a good sign. Okay, so consensus pick 2021 for best trainer, which again we're saying is a shoe that can eat up a lot of your training miles, reliable, consistent, can function as a workhorse shoe, has some mild versatility. It's going to be durable. Like DJ said, it's the shoe you're just going to reach for. This was Matt and my top pick. DJ came in at number 3. We kind of talked about it, came up with this as the consensus, and it is, drum roll. All right, I'll say it.
Oh, I wasn't sure what you wanted me to.
We didn't script how we were going to announce it. Super lame.
Any of this, by the way.
Yeah, this is going to be great. The Adidas Adizero Boston 10. Which we were talking about. I feel like we're going to make a lot of people mad by picking this shoe.
Talking about this for a long time, going, we all love all this. Like, I've gone through 2 pairs of these fully. Like, I've taken them to each pair to 250 miles, which for me, I kill shoes normally.
That's 500 for anyone else.
Yeah.
I did that for both Bostons, right? I destroyed those shoes. I took them the full amount. And it's something I couldn't stop reaching for. And I think Nathan had a similar experience.
Yes. So I run not nearly as much as these guys. So I run, like 30 miles a week, around that. And they're running more like 60 to 80. And, for me to get more than 50 miles on one of these shoes that we're testing, because we get so much, like I get them to 50 and usually they fall by the wayside. I have 185 miles on my pair. So that in and of itself just speaks volumes to me wanting to reach for it too. So for sure. Matt, why don't you talk about construction of the shoe and what we found that we like about it?
And it's funny is that I don't know about you, Nathan and David, but the first couple miles of the very first version that I had, I didn't really like it, to be honest. I was like, I remember the Boston 9, I had really mixed feelings about. It wasn't my favorite, but the ones before that I loved. The 7 and the 8 were both phenomenal shoes, and shoes that I trained in. And I remember watching a lot of Adidas Elites use as marathon racers over the Adios, which was always really interesting to me. But it just had that versatility. It was super light. It was in like the 8-ounce range. Yeah. And it wasn't that much different from the Adios, but just a little bit more like you could train in it kind of stuff. Although I also trained in the Adios for some time before that, so that's me. But the Boston 10 is such a huge departure from that because it gained 2 ounces. They added 2 midsole foam, so they took boost away, which was the biggest thing for a long time. It had Light Strike Pro and Light Strike, which is one of the few shoes to have Light Strike Pro besides the Adios Pro now. So it's kind of like, oh, wow. And the addition of rods, it was kind of like, dude, you guys are just adding rods or plates to everything. Like, is this really special? But as the shoe broke in and I got used to the ride, it was like, I just could not stop reaching for it. Yeah. It wasn't a shoe that I wanted to do workouts in, but when I did do workouts, I actually had phenomenal workouts. And I'm like, I don't understand how I'm doing this in a 10-ounce shoe. So it's still, for a lot of people, going to be more probably an up-tempo trainer. But I think for us, we discovered that it was just a great trainer. I've used it on trail, which I probably shouldn't have, but that might explain some of the sole. I've used it for long runs, easy runs, and it's just a shoe that I can depend on, and it's stable enough, I think, because of the design and the rods, that it works as a stable, neutral shoe for someone like me. So I really have enjoyed it. And I think that people, if you really love that and it kind of fits all the boxes except the weight, give it a little time and see. But it is a very polarizing shoe, and I acknowledge that. I think a lot of people, some people like us are going to like it, other people may not. But
why do you guys think it's polarizing?
I think because a lot of people that like the Adios, why do I keep saying the Adios? A lot of people that liked the previous versions of the Boston are just going to be like, no, I'm not willing to try this. I think other people that don't necessarily want a max stack height shoe for the purpose that this thing fills may kind of be averse to it, but I'd say give it a chance, and it ends up smoothing out really well. I know there's also some hesitation, people going, do I really want to have a trainer that has rods or plates in it? And I found the rods to not be as aggressive as something like, so you got, especially as it breaks in, the flexibility comes. So it's not like the plates where it's totally stiff, but it is stiff initially. So I think I wouldn't worry so much about like, oh my gosh,
I think you broke your rods, man.
No. How many miles do you have on
No,
yours?
mine do the same thing. I don't have my pair with me right now because I'm in the mountains, but mine do the same thing at like 200 plus
Wait,
miles.
can you go again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess.
It's not
Yeah.
that much.
It does,
I mean, you have to load it. They're present. It's not like the 361 Pacer ST had a 4-foot plate that like
Yeah, I
was
think
not.
it's just like yeah.
Or even the Razor
Elite.
Elite.
Yeah.
Like that. Those are these are present. I mean, they definitely stiffen up the 4-foot. But,
Yeah.
I
But once
feel like
things break in, and it's just, maybe we're biased. I just really like Light Strike Pro, and to have that in a daily trainer as a top foam is really nice. It's a great foam that feels really resilient, and I'm surprised it didn't break down, which I would have expected it to. And it's the same experience I'm having with the Adios Pro, where the foam's not breaking down, but I have destroyed the heel so much I can't run it anymore. So the Boston, yeah.
David, why do you think it's polarizing? Like, what do people hate about it or love about it?
I think similar to what Matt said. I mean, this is a max cushion shoe. This is a maximal stack height shoe. It's a firm rocker. It's got plates, and it's a complete reimagination of what the Boston was, which did have a cult following.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like taking the Kinvara and then like completely reimagining it.
That's a really good analogy. Is like, imagine if Saucony took the Kinvara, made it a max stack height shoe, and then shifted it to like a top layer of Power Run PB with a plate in there. How would people react to that?
And I had a pre-boost Boston as well, and I know what the Boston used to be, and this is not it. Right. But it's still a Boston though. It still runs much faster than the weight. I mean, like I've taken it through pretty much everything. I mean, I've done 7 miles at 5:30 pace in it. Yeah. It's like I've done workouts in it.
I do still agree. We had a little conversation about this, that I feel like the new Adios, the Adios 6 is the
old Boston.
New Boston. And that
they kind of switched roles a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. The Boston 10 needs to be, the series maybe needs to be renamed, and the Adios 6 is what the Boston.
If you liked Boston 8, 7, 8, you'd want the Adios 6 kind of thing. Or like that'd be the most analogous from a feel perspective. Which
is also a great shoe, by the way. Yeah.
Do you guys think people just hate on Light Strike as well as a midsole?
Yeah, people like to hate Light Strike. No, they have been since the beginning. I remember getting like the RC and people were like, it's EVA. Yeah. And the SL20 comes out. It's Light Strike. Yeah. And then like meanwhile, a lot of the Adidas athletes are actually really enjoying it, but like
I'm a Light Strike fan. I've been able to run in like 3 shoes with it now, and I'm like, it's just consistent. It's not fun. It's not poppy. I think it's not. Yeah. It's not a sexy foam in that way. Yeah. Like it doesn't give you like fuel cell bounce. It's just not to expect. But like you kind of said, it's a firm rockered max stack shoe, and if the geometry of this shoe, I think the geometry of this shoe is what I like about it a lot. Is they have a really nice lateral bevel that brings you in really nicely. It's got a really nice wide base that you transition forward off of. I just thought every piece was smooth. The rocker in the 4-foot is not aggressive and flexible enough, but you get a little bit of cushion from the Light Strike Pro. But the shoe didn't become the shoe I loved until after 50 miles. And then it was the one that I reached for over and over and over. And
Klein was with me on my first experience with the Boston. And I remember him asking me, he was like, what do you think of it? And I was like, I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know. And then but as you break it in, it does feel a lot nicer, and it obviously still made the podium for me. So out of everything we've tested, it did quite well.
It's challenging. I also think in today's world where so much, especially of American culture, and I can't speak to other cultures around the world, but we expect things to feel good right away. And a lot of shoes have gotten to that point where the initial step in feel, we're kind of expecting to be good right away. And a couple of years ago, it wasn't like that. We all knew, I got to break this shoe in. It's going to take some time. It'll feel great. And the Boston 10 is definitely harken back to that era where it is a lot of new technology, but it does take time to break in. Mm-hmm. And once you break it in, though, has worked very well for several of us.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Light Strike Pro does work really well in the forefoot. Matt alluded to it earlier, but it does kind of soften that landing onto the rods a little bit while still maintaining that firm rocker. So you feel like you have a nice cushioned forefoot while still kind of snapping off the forefoot,
Totally.
which is kind of fun. That's pretty fun for a daily trainer.
Totally.
So,
it was a kind of a similar situation where, like, not similar, but that Light Strike Pro, especially in the Audio 6, I know we're not supposed to be talking about that right now, but
it's fine.
Like there's no
rules here
as a 5K, 10K racer, and I'm like, no. Why would I do workouts in this shoe? This is like a lightweight trainer. But then I did several workouts in it, and when I got up on my forefoot and hit that Light Strike Pro, I was like, oh, okay, I guess despite the weight, I guess I could see, some people using it for this. I put it as a little longer distance shoe than that, but it's a good foam. It's one of those foams I think this year. I didn't quite like it in the original Adios Pro, but I think what they've done with it this year has really been nice.
Yeah, it's been good.
So going back to the Light Strike, I think Light Strike it's like any foam. It depends on how they utilize it. Like, I really am enjoying it in the RC3, but this foam feels totally different than other Light Strike. It just kind of depends on the shoe.
And Adidas holds their kind of foam actual makeup pretty close to the chest, so we don't really know as much as we know for some other foams, like how they pull it together. So
we don't know if this is EVA or an EVA TPU blend or what. We have no idea.
There was just some random interview with Nick Roche, and I remember him just being like, Light Strike, basic EVA, and puts it to the side. That's like my only
and then when he talked about
confirmation of what this is,
and when he was asked about Light Strike Pro, he's like, not really going to talk about that. So, the guy who knows probably the most, or the guy who can translate the information the most, just like he's not either. So,
but then there were publications saying that it was like some kind of TPU EVA hybrid too, wasn't there?
I don't know.
Like way back when they first released it, I feel like there was something on.
But I don't remember those comments from Adidas, so people can make speculations all day long. But the people that are going to know are the ones who develop it. So.
Cool. All right, guys. So that was our episode for the day, talking about best daily trainer. A fast forward look. Nope. Whatever the thing is, we're going to give you a sneak peek into the future. Our next episodes for the kind of the rest of the year here are going to be talking about different awards. So we're going to talk about our best stability shoe. We're going to break that category down a little more and talk about what we think the future of stability might look like, and even categorically what that means and what it should mean. So we're going to talk about stability. We're going to talk about the best racing shoes of this year. We're going to talk about the most versatile shoes of this year, and maybe a couple others. So you can keep that on the horizon, or see that I'm terrible at speaking. You can see that those are what are going to be coming on the horizon, are talking about those types of shoes. And as always, you can check out what we're doing on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It always helps if you subscribe to this podcast and leave a review about what we're doing. And you can always reach out to us at doctorsofrunning@gmail.com with questions or additional thoughts, or if you have other, picks of what would be your trainer of the year, or shoes that you wish we would have tested that we haven't this year, please let us know. This is a great time because we are talking with companies this time of year about what things look like for 2022. So again, thanks for sticking with us. Boston 10, trainer of the year. And we look forward to next time.